All right, let's talk some Commanders draft. Washington Commanders, also known as the Washington football team, they had an odd draft. So you see what you see next to me on the screen. Those are the 7 players that they drafted in this draft. You have the position they play, where they were drafted, and then where the consensus big board ranked them. And you notice they reached, according to the consensus big board, every single pick. They managed to pull off the unthinkable here, managing to get a perfect run of reaches in this draft. Which, listen, Washington seems to be okay in doing this. There are different philosophies in this stuff. My philosophy is try to get the best player available. Don't overestimate your own evaluation. Get a player who's going to be good. Typically, if you draft someone at pick 50 who was number 100 on the consensus big board, typically they play like a guy who should have been drafted 100th, then 50th. That's typically how it works out. Other people have different philosophies, though. Washington clearly is okay with reaching. They want to get their guy, and if they like a guy, they're going to make sure they go out and get him, and that's what they did here in this draft, and we'll see how well it works out. Emmanuel Forbes, pick 16, was projected to go 30th. I actually had a mid-first round grade on him, though, so I'm not going to crush that pick the way some other people would. Very surprised they went with him over Christian Gonzalez. Very surprised about that. I really like Forbes as a player. I think he's very good. But yeah, I was very surprised that they made that selection. But I like Forbes. I think he'll be really good for them. And he's this great athlete of a player who I think would have been higher on the consensus big board if he just weighed a little bit more. But everything else was the exact same, which we saw with Devonta Smith. Sometimes people overvalue that stuff. They look at height and weight a little bit too much and don't pay attention to the fact that weight doesn't really impact how you play the cornerback position that much. It does a little, but he can still tackle. He can still make plays like that. So maybe it'll cause him to get injured more. But typically that's not exactly how it works. So I wouldn't be overly concerned about that. Jartavius Martin, safety, who they picked with pick 47. He was projected to go 83rd. I'm not as big of a fan of this selection as I was for Forbes, but I can see why they like Martin. I think he could be a good run-stuffing safety, which is what I think they're looking for him. Sort of that can also play sort of slot corner. He's going to fill a role for them is what I think that they're trying to look at. And maybe this is a pick for need as opposed to a pick for, just getting the best player available. They did nearly make the playoffs last year. Maybe they're trying to make sure that they can make that happen. The cornerback room could use a little bit of improvement. So maybe getting an extra guy, sort of double dipping here. I can see the logic behind it just a little bit early for me for selecting Martin. And we're going to that's going to be the case with a lot of these guys is I'm going to say, yeah, I get why you did it. Just would have liked to do it around later with, Ricky Stromberg, another guy who, one thing, I like drafting centers relatively, in this spot because a lot of times good centers do fall a little bit just simply because, not every team needs a center. So it's a pretty good idea and people do draft for need. So just due to the perceived weakness at positional value, getting someone like Stromberg, who, Tyler Larson is currently, he's the center under team that had the most playing time last year. He's someone who I think maybe would be the starter, but now you at least have a competition in the room. Again, was projected to go 150th. They selected him at 97. So we're talking another reach here. And his analytics are solid. They're not great. They're not bad. I wouldn't be concerned, but I wouldn't be excited either about that. Again, feels like someone who I like getting the player, but it just feels like they maybe could have gotten a better player potentially, which is, one of the issues with reaching like this. Braeden Daniels, another offensive lineman. So again, trying to get some offensive line depth here, if nothing else, which I do understand. Again, you have Nick Gates, you have Andrew Norwell, maybe even Wiley could play guard. I don't know exactly what's going to happen there. They have players. Get another guy in the room. I understand the logic behind it. Again, another reach by a decent amount. Like I said, these are all reaches, but this one by a decent amount. He's someone who, so the analytics, which I care about when it comes to offensive linemen, because it predicts pretty well if offensive linemen are going to be good in the future or not. For corners, I don't pay attention to it because it doesn't matter that much. But for O-linemen, it does. And for someone like Daniels, last year the numbers weren't great, but the year before they were better. And actually the previous 2 years they were better. So you see this happen sometimes with some of these players where it's like they're coming off a bad year but have had previous good years, and teams don't really know what to do with them. Sometimes they get overdrafted, sometimes they fall way far in the draft. It's just a very difficult situation. And so taking a flyer on him with pick 118, I'm not really going to hate on it too much, even if, again, it was a slight reach here. You then have KJ Henry, who I think actually could come in and potentially be a pretty good day one pass rusher rotational guy, which is pretty good value for 137. So he's 143 on the consensus big board. This is the closest they got to a non-reach according to the consensus big board. And he's someone who I think maybe should have been a little bit higher, just in the sense of I don't know if he's ever going to be a 3-down player. I don't know if he's ever going to be someone you want on first or second down. I just don't know if he has that capability. But he's out of Clemson and had good production at the pass rush position. Not great production, but good production out of that position when he got his snaps. And sort of last year was the main year that he got playing time. Someone who I think could come in, and for Washington, they obviously don't need a starting edge guy. They have, Chase Young, who now doesn't have his fifth-year option, but still someone who you feel could be good. And Montez Sweat's very good. James Smith-Williams, Casey Toohill, They got a couple players, but get another guy in the room who maybe could just do some nice things. And hey, if Montez Sweat and Chase Young both play 1,000 snaps next year, awesome. But if not, which probably won't happen, then you have someone who can come in and do some stuff there. Then finally, the last couple of picks here. Every time there's a halfback selected around this spot, I do wonder: are you a special teamer, or are you someone who they feel like can actually come in and be good right away? Halfback out of Kentucky, who there's things to be interested about with him. I do think that for Washington, you look at their running back room situation. It's something who I think Brian Robinson was really good last year. They have Antonio Gibson. Do they need another guy? Probably. You can always have an extra guy. And getting a running back round 6, I just like, because it'll typically be a good special teamer if nothing else. But plus, there's the potential of, someone who can also, maybe be a depth player on top of it. So that's what you're drafting for at this point. So make that happen. And then Andre Jones, again, another pretty massive reach. Someone who was 389th on the consensus big board. So, okay. Consensus big board, not a fan. But again, we're talking pick 233. If you think he can do some stuff, fine, go ahead. There's only a couple picks left, only 26 picks left after that in the draft anyway. So if you like someone else, they're probably going to be available undrafted regardless. So someone who's probably going to again come in and be depth, I would assume. So yeah, that's my evaluation of the draft that Washington had. It's not a draft I necessarily hate, but it is one where I feel like they could have gotten more for it. Every pick I can understand, and you can again, argue into any pick, and you can certainly make a strong argument for every single pick, which I do like, is that they clearly had a mindset, and they weren't just throwing darts at the dartboard. They knew what they were doing, they had a plan, and they executed it. It's just not the philosophy come draft day that I would have gone with, which is why I'm a bit lower on it, but I can see why some people might be a bit higher on it than I am. But yeah, those are my thoughts on this draft. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from y'all. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.